Ecological economics. Eco-economics refers to both a transdisciplinary and interdisciplinary field of academic research that aims to address the interdependence and coevolution of human economies and natural ecosystems over time and space. It is distinguished from environmental economics, which is the mainstream economic analysis of the environment, by its treatment of the economy as a subsystem of the ecosystem and its emphasis upon preserving natural capital. One survey of German economists found that ecological and environmental economics are different schools of economic thought, with ecological economists emphasizing strong sustainability and rejecting the proposition that natural capital can be substituted by human-made capital. Ecological economics was founded as a modern movement in the works of and interactions between various European and American academics. The related field of green economics is, in general, a more politically applied form of the subject. According to ecological economist Malte Faber, ecological economics is defined by its focus on nature, justice, and time. Issues of intergenerational equity, irreversibility of environmental change, uncertainty of long-term outcomes, and sustainable development guide ecological economic analysis and valuation. Ecological economists have questioned fundamental mainstream economic approaches such as cost-benefit analysis and the separability of economic values from scientific research, contending that economics is unavoidably normative rather than positive. Positional analysis, which attempts to incorporate time and justice issues, is proposed as an alternative. History and development. Early modern interest in ecology and economics dates back to the 1940s in the work of K. William Kapp and Carl Polanyi, and the 1960s in work by Kenneth Boulding and Herman Daly. However, the first organized meetings of modern ecological economists occurred in the 1980s. These began in 1982, at the instigation of Lois Banner, with a meeting held in Sweden. Most were ecosystem ecologists or mainstream environmental economists, with the exception of Daly. In 1987, Daly and Costanza edited an issue of Ecological Modeling to Test the Waters. A book entitled Ecological Economics, by Juan Martinez Elia, was published later that year. 1989 saw the foundation of the International Society for Ecological Economics and publication of its journal, Ecological Economics, by Elsevier. Robert Costanza was the first president of the Society and first editor of the journal, currently edited by Richard Howarth. European conceptual founders include Nicholas Georgescu-Roegen, William Kapp and Carl Polanyi. Some key concepts of what is now ecological economics are evident in the writings of E.F. Schumacher, whose book Small is Beautiful, A Study of Economics as If People Mattered, was published just a few years before the first edition of Herman Daly's Comprehensive and Persuasive Steady-State Economics. Other figures include ecologists C.S. Holling, H.T. Odum and Robert Costanza, biologist Gretchen Daly and physicist Robert S. CUNY geography professor David Harvey explicitly added ecological concerns to political economic literature. This parallel development in political economy has been continued by analysts such as sociologist John Bellamy Foster. The antecedents can be traced back to the Romantics of the 19th century as well as some Enlightenment political economists of that era. Concerns over population were expressed by Thomas Malthus, while John Stuart Mill hypothesized that the stationary state of an economy was desirable, anticipating later insights of modern ecological economists, without having had their experience of the social and ecological costs of the dramatic post-World War II industrial expansion. As Martinez Elia explores in his book, the debate on energy and economic systems can also be traced into the 19th century, e.g., Nobel Prize-winning chemist Frederick Soddy. Soddy criticized the prevailing belief of the economy as a perpetual motion machine, capable of generating infinite wealth, a criticism echoed by his intellectual heirs in the now emergent field of ecological economics. The Romanian economist Nicholas Georgescu Rogan, who was among Daly's teachers at Vanderbilt University, provided ecological economics with a modern conceptual framework based on the material and energy flows of economic production and consumption. His magnum opus, The Entropy Law and the Economic Process, has been highly influential. Articles by Inge Ropke and Clive Spash cover the development and modern history of ecological economics and explain its differentiation from resource and environmental economics, as well as some of the controversy between American and European schools of thought. An article by Robert Costanza, David Stern, Lining He, and Chun Bomar responded to a call by Mick Common to determine the foundational literature of ecological economics by using citation analysis to examine which books and articles have had the most influence on the development of the field. However, citations analysis has itself proven controversial, and similar work has been criticized by Clive Spash for attempting to predetermine what is regarded as influential in ecological economics through study design and data manipulation. In addition, the journal Ecological Economics has itself been criticized for swamping the field with mainstream economics, nature and ecology. A simple circular flow of income diagram is replaced in ecological economics by a more complex flow diagram reflecting the input of solar energy, which sustains natural inputs and environmental services which are then used as units of production. Once consumed, natural inputs pass out of the economy as pollution and waste. The potential of an environment to provide services and materials is referred to as an environment source function, and this function is depleted as resources are consumed or pollution contaminates the resources. The sink function describes an environment's ability to absorb and render harmless waste and pollution. When waste output exceeds the limit of the sink function, long-term damage occurs. Some persistent pollutants, such as some organic pollutants and nuclear waste, are absorbed very slowly or not at all. Ecological economists emphasize minimizing cumulative pollutants. Pollutants affect human health and the health of the climate. The economic value of natural capital and ecosystem services is accepted by mainstream environmental economics, but is emphasized as especially important in ecological economics. Ecological economists may begin by estimating how to maintain a stable environment before assessing the cost in dollar terms. Ecological economist Robert Costanza led an attempted valuation of the global ecosystem in 1997. Initially published in Nature, the article concluded on $33 trillion with a range from $16 trillion to $54 trillion. Half of the value went to nutrient cycling. The open oceans, continental shelves, and estuaries had the highest total value, and the highest per hectare values went to estuaries, swamps, floodplains, and seagrass, algae beds. The work was criticized by articles in Ecological Economics Volume 25, Issue 1. But the critics acknowledged the positive potential for economic valuation of the global ecosystem. The Earth's carrying capacity is a central issue in ecological economics. Early economists such as Thomas Malthus pointed out the finite carrying capacity of the Earth, which was also central to the MIT study limits to growth. Diminishing returns suggest that productivity increases will slow if major technological progress is not made. Food production may become a problem, as erosion, an impending water crisis, and soil salinity reduce the productivity of agriculture. Ecological economists argue that industrial agriculture, which exacerbates these problems, is not sustainable agriculture, and are generally inclined favorably to organic farming, which also reduces the output of carbon. Global wild fisheries are believed to have peaked and begun a decline, with valuable habitats such as estuaries in critical condition. The aquaculture or farming of piscivorous fish, like salmon, does not help solve the problem because they need to be fed products from other fish. Studies have shown that salmon farming has major negative impacts on wild salmon, as well as the forage fish that need to be caught to feed them. Since animals are higher on the trophic level, they are less efficient sources of food energy. Reduced consumption of meat would reduce the demand for food, but as nations develop, they tend to adopt high-meat diets similar to that of the United States. Genetically modified food, a conventional solution to the problem, presents numerous problems. BT corn produces its own Bacillus thuringiensis toxin protein, but the pest resistance is believed to be only a matter of time. The overall effect of GMF on yields is contentious, with the USDA and FAO acknowledging that GMFs do not necessarily have higher yields and may even have reduced yields. Global warming is now widely acknowledged as a major issue, with all national scientific academies expressing agreement on the importance of the issue. As the population growth intensifies and energy demand increases, the world faces an energy crisis. Some economists and scientists forecast a global ecological crisis if energy use is not contained. The Stern Report is an example. The disagreement has sparked a vigorous debate on issue of discounting and intergenerational equity. Global geochemical cycles critical for life. Nitrogen cycle, water cycle, carbon cycle, oxygen cycle, ethics. Mainstream economics has attempted to become a value-free, hard science, but ecological economists argue that value-free economics is generally not realistic. Ecological economics is more willing to entertain alternative conceptions of utility, efficiency, and cost-benefit such as positional analysis or multi-criteria analysis. Ecological economics is typically viewed as economics for sustainable development, and may have goals similar to green politics. Schools of thought. Various competing schools of thought exist in the field. Some are close to resource and environmental economics, while others are far more heterodox in outlook. An example of the latter is the European Society for Ecological Economics. An example of the former is the Swedish Beijer International Institute of Ecological Economics. Clive Spash has argued for the classification of the ecological economics movement, and more generally work by different economic schools on the environment, into three main categories. These are the mainstream new resource economists, the new environmental pragmatists, and the more radical social ecological economists. International survey work comparing the relevance of the categories for mainstream and heterodox economists shows some clear divisions between environmental and ecological economists. Differentiation from mainstream schools. Some ecological economists prioritize adding natural capital to the typical capital asset analysis of land, labor, and financial capital. These ecological economists then use tools from mathematical economics as in mainstream economics, but may apply them more closely to the natural world. Whereas mainstream economists tend to be technological optimists, ecological economists are inclined to be technological skeptics. They reason that the natural world has a limited carrying capacity and that its resources may run out. Since destruction of important environmental resources could be practically irreversible and catastrophic, ecological economists are inclined to justify cautionary measures based on the precautionary principle. The most cogent example of how the different theories treat similar assets is tropical rainforest ecosystems, most obviously the Yasuni region of Ecuador. While this area has substantial deposits of bitumen, it is also one of the most diverse ecosystems on Earth, and some estimates establish it has over 200 undiscovered medical substances in its genomes, most of which would be destroyed by logging the forest or mining the bitumen. Effectively, the instructional capital of the genomes is undervalued by analyses which view the rainforest primarily as a source of wood, oil, tar and perhaps food. Increasingly, the carbon credit for leaving the extremely carbon-intensive bitumen in the ground is also valued. The government of Ecuador set a price of $350 million for an oil lease with the intent of selling it to someone committed to never exercising it at all and instead preserving the rainforest. While this natural capital and ecosystems services approach has proven popular amongst many, it has also been contested as failing to address the underlying problems with mainstream economics, growth, market capitalism and monetary valuation of the environment. Critiques concern the need to create a more meaningful relationship with nature and the non-human world than evident in the instrumentalism of shallow ecology and the environmental economists' commodification of everything external to the market system.